In the mid-1990s, a generation of Black people in America watched a new kind of mass gathering rise on the National Mall, the Million Man March, then the Million Woman March. Out of that spirit, another child was born, louder, younger, more defiant, the Million Youth March of 1998, convened in Harlem by Dr. Khalid Muhammad. For Malik Zulu Shabazz, a young attorney and organizer at the time, this march was not a side project. It was his assignment from history. As he tells it, I was blessed to be his attorney and his youth organizer, standing at the intersection of law and street, fighting to carve out 1 hour of free Black space in a city determined to shut it down.
We hope that the young people here in this city will pursue education to its highest degree and put God first in everything that they do and begin to develop themselves. To me, that's what this march is about. Young people wanting to have self-determination.
The political climate around them was already burning. That year, the country had just witnessed the brutal lynching of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas, chained to a truck and dragged to his death by white supremacists. In response, the emerging new Black Panther Party, under Dr. Khalid Muhammad's leadership, went into Jasper, armed and unafraid, to confront the Ku Klux Klan face to face. Those images and that stance put Khalid Muhammad in a powerful but dangerous position. To many Black youth, he looked like the fearless defender they had been waiting for. To law enforcement and politicians, he looked like a man who refused to bow to any of their rules. At the same time, Khalid's relationship with the Nation of Islam was in limbo. Pushed to the margins by some, embraced as a warrior by others, he made what Shabazz calls a firm decision in 1998 to advance his leadership as best he knew how, unapologetically and in the open.
Since Brother Khalid was representing Allah, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, myself, and the Nation of Islam, it is incumbent upon me, if I find his remarks to be inconsistent with the teachings and guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to correct, rebuke, and discipline my minister and my student. I found the speech, after listening to it in context, vile in manner, repugnant, malicious, mean-spirited, and spoken in mockery of individuals and people, which is against the spirit of Islam. While I stand by the truths that he spoke, I must condemn in the strongest terms the manner in which those truths were represented.
Two men on a collision course. When Dr. Khalid announced the Million Youth March for September 5th, 1998, he wasn't just reserving a few Harlem blocks. He was challenging the authority of New York City's most aggressive mayor in a generation, Rudy Giuliani. Shabazz remembers it simply as a clash between a strong and fearless Black man who drew strength from the streets and a white mayor who prided himself on ruling that city with an iron fist. Behind closed doors and in public press conferences, their words escalated into what Shabazz calls a war of words, each man refusing to yield ground. Giuliani tried to kill the event at the permit stage, refusing permission for the march and declaring it a hate march that New York would not allow. Khalid's team, with Malik Zulu Shabazz in the lead, took the fight into federal court and won. In that courtroom, the city lost. The judge ruled that the Million Youth March had a constitutional right to assemble in Harlem, forcing the mayor to accept at least 4 tightly controlled hours of youth gathering on Malcolm X Boulevard. Revenge by any other name. According to Shabazz, losing in court only hardened Giuliani's resolve. As he tells it, the mayor wanted revenge for being upstaged by a man he believed should have stayed in the shadows. On the streets of Harlem, that revenge took a visible form. Shabazz describes looking out and seeing an army, roughly 5,000 police officers, snipers on rooftops, helicopters circling overhead, armored vehicles staged nearby, and even barges on the East River ready to haul people away if mass arrests were ordered. By his count, the event drew around 20,000 people into and around the march area, many forced to maneuver through barricades and heavy police lines just to get close. In his words, for every 4 people, there seemed to be a cop. It did not feel like community protection. It felt like an occupation. For Khalid's team, this was not crowd control. It was a stage being set for a confrontation that the city could later blame on them.
Why they being stopped and being routed all the way down and told to come back up?
Actually, no one is.
Now, look. If they don't want to drive, that's fine. If you don't want them to drive down, I understand that. But now, people are trying to come to the march. They got to walk all the way down and then walk all the way up.
Well, sir, the organizer, this is how everything was set up.
Let me tell you something. Call who you need to call, because in 30 minutes, this shit gonna be off the hook. We got a problem, and I don't mind having a problem, to be honest with you. That's bullshit, man. It's exactly what that is.
Because we cannot accept.
We understand.
Matter of fact, that's totally unacceptable. That's totally unacceptable. And I'm gonna tell you, we gonna have a problem, man.
Absolutely.
A great program under siege. Despite the tension, Shabazz remembers the program itself as electric. Revolutionaries, community organizers, and youth leaders poured onto the stage. Hip-hop legends and grassroots activists shared the mic. The tone was radical, but the purpose was clear: to declare that Black youth had a right to live, to resist police terror, and to define their own future. From the podium, Khalid Muhammad's name echoed down Harlem's corridors. By 1998, Shabazz says, he was already revered. But by the time this march came, he was a hero, the strongest Black man in New York, and to many, one of the strongest in America. This was the environment in which the city chose to line up phalanxes of helmeted, shield-bearing officers around a predominantly Black youth rally. 4 p.m., the clock as a weapon. The federal court order had set a hard deadline: 4 p.m., no later. On paper, it sounded like a neutral condition. On the ground, under helicopters and riot shields, it became a fuse. Shabazz recalls that at first, Dr. Khalid did not intend to give the final speech at all. The program was packed, elders like Dr. Yosef Ben Jochannan were on the stage, and a long line of speakers fought for limited time. But as the afternoon wore on and the tension thickened, something shifted. Khalid later confided that he began to anticipate a police attack. The way the officers were stacked along the sides, the way they edged closer as 4 approached, it looked less like a safety perimeter and more like a trap ready to spring. In Shabazz's telling, that is when Khalid made his decision. If this was his march, then he had an obligation to say something before the state moved in.
This march is just a part of what I would call the healing process that we as African Americans have to go through with each other. You see, it's a thing of us. It's a thing of us coming together and learning to love one another. You know, it's not a point of ostracizing or keeping everybody else or completely separating everybody else. But first, you have to learn how to come together with each other before you can start worrying about everybody else and everybody else's problem.
The final warning. When he finally approached the microphone, something eerie happened. The tightly packed stage that had been crowded with dignitaries and comrades for hours suddenly cleared. No order had been given, but by the time Khalid spoke, most of the chairs and many of the elders were gone, leaving a smaller security circle of Panthers and young men in position. Behind the stage, Malik Zulu Shabazz was doing his own calculus, building a defensive line of maybe 30 to 35 men, trying to hold police back one step at a time as they edged forward. He remembers shouting at the officers to move back, even as he watched them advance inch by inch. Khalid's final speech that day was a direct indictment of the police presence over Black youth. He condemned the deployment as an occupying force and warned that if those troops attacked the marchers, the people had a right to defend themselves. In one of his most controversial lines, he vowed that if the police assaulted them, the same weapons used to brutalize Black bodies could, in the name of self-defense, be turned back on their abusers. For Giuliani and his allies, that was the excuse they needed. For Khalid's team, it was a necessary warning from a man who refused to let Black people be beaten in silence again. 4:01 p.m., the throwdown. The time was not metaphorical. Shabazz insists on it. At 4:01 p.m., just 1 minute after the deadline, the mayor sent his forces in.
And if anyone attacks you, already decide who will be the one to disconnect the railing where you are and beat the hell out of them with the railing where you are. And if you don't have a gun, every one of them has one gun, two guns, maybe three guns, and if they attack you, take their goddamn guns from them and use their guns on them.
Helicopters swooped lower. Lines of officers with shields and helmets advanced like a battalion into the defenses around the stage. On the ground, it became what Shabazz calls a real live throwdown. In the chaos that followed, 17 police officers and approximately 7 marchers were hospitalized, and Khalid himself had to be rushed out under emergency conditions. This was no peaceful dispersal. It was a melee engineered at the edge of a clock that the city controlled. For the Giuliani administration, the story was simple. An extremist incited a riot, and the police restored order. For Khalid's camp, the story was just as clear. A black march had won its right to exist in court, only to be punished in the streets by a state that could not tolerate militant self-defense in Harlem.
You hear a lot of negative things, and it's not like that. You see, kids see the cops. My children saw the cops, and they got afraid. I want her to know that Black people can stick together. It's not what you see on TV.
Looking back years later, Shabazz admits there was no detailed contingency plan for what would happen if the police launched a full-scale assault. They did not have military-style formations or escape routes mapped out. What they had was conviction, and a leader operating off what he called his revolutionary instincts. When a fellow organizer asked Malik, "What's the plan, fight or flight?" he could only answer honestly, "I don't know. Muhammad is in charge." That uncertainty wasn't proof of recklessness. For them, it was proof of just how far the state had stacked the deck. The other side had helicopters, armored vehicles, barges, and thousands of trained officers. Khalid's side had a stage, a crowd, and a handful of men ready to lock arms in front of them.
And one of the children of the Million Man March, convened by Dr. Khalid Muhammad, who also struggled for that great march in '95. Well, the child of the Million Man March, one of its children, like the Million Woman March, was the Million Youth March, convened by Dr. Khalid Muhammad. In 1998, Harlem, New York. I was blessed to be his attorney and his youth organizer, and after several court battles in federal court, we were victorious over New York City government, won those rights to march, won the rights to march, and had convened this infamous rally in Harlem, and due to the acrimony between Rudy Giuliani, y'all know Giuliani on a national level. We know him as a Republican mayor of New York that's touted his strong strengths against so-called crime, and his clash with Dr. Khalid Muhammad around this led to the infamous events of the September 5th, 1998 Million Youth March. And it's forever a great day in my life and Khalid Muhammad's life. And I'm happy to report, to summarize, I'm happy to report that in the spirit of continuation of why we mobilize Million Man March, Million Youth March, I have to say that your brother Malik Zulu Shabazz, a student of Khalid Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan, amongst many others, is still organizing and building and fighting in this liberation struggle, which is the objectives of those marches, that we keep struggling and fighting on a higher level. So I'm checking in and reporting in, sir, and I have a report.
Well, good. Some people didn't understand how what happened at the Million Youth March. Can you share that with us?
Okay, well, what happened was, again, the buildup of tensions here in 1998, which was probably Dr. Khalid Muhammad's greatest revolutionary year. James Byrd was murdered in Jasper, Texas, and a militant and radical Khalid Muhammad appeared as the leader of the new Black Panther Party, the emerging new Black Panther Party, in honor of the legacy of the notorious Black Panther Party. And so this made national news. This put Khalid Muhammad in a very strong political position in 1998. And at the same time, we had moved on the James Byrd situation and against the Klan, running the Klan out of Jasper, Texas, and the new Black Panther Party came to light for that armed demonstration, and Muhammad at the center of it. At the same time, we were pressing for the Million Youth March for September 5th, 98 in New York. At this time, Khalid Muhammad had been in limbo with in his status with the Nation of Islam, and as detailed in my book, The Book of Khalid. At this point in time, 1998, Khalid Muhammad made a firm decision to advance his leadership as best he knew how. And so what happened was a strong and fearless black man, Khalid Muhammad, announced his event, and a white man, Rudy Giuliani, who felt himself equally as strong as a white man, and he controlled the city. They clashed. And Giuliani, all our negotiations with the city, I as the attorney, the negotiations collapsed. We had to go into court. The court ruled in our favor. But all along the way, there was a war of words between Muhammad and Giuliani. And Giuliani himself admitted he had never heard rhetoric like this since the 1960s, as he had met his match with Khalid Muhammad. And Khalid Muhammad rose to be a black hero. I mean, he was already well revered in New York, but I mean, he was a hero by the time this march came, and we couldn't go anywhere. He was a hero, strongest black man in New York, and because of everything I said, considered to be one of the strongest black men in America at that time. On our way, we met the Honorable Kwame Ture. You know him some as Stokely Carmichael. We met him in New York and sat down and got his revolutionary blessings, wisdom, and guidance. And so up on the march, where Giuliani gets his revenge because he had lost in court. Khalid Muhammad had upbraided him in the public. He had usurped all of Giuliani's minions and blacks who had signed on to his payroll, some of them Muslims. Giuliani got his revenge. He brought out 5,000 police officers to police this Million Youth March event, which in itself drew about 20,000. Well, for every 4 persons, there was a police officer. There was 5,000 cops. There was helicopters, snipers on the roofs, barges on the East River to carry people away, armored vehicles all in the area, and there was a situation that was set for a clash, and it was a great program. Revolutionaries from all across the country spoke. Hip-hop legends spoke. It was a great program. It was a great day. But it did clash at the end of that day. It did clash. And Khalid Muhammad spoke a fiery speech at the end of that march. And he criticized the police strongly, and the court gave us a 4:00 deadline to end, and normally, you have a grace period or whatever, but at 4:01 exactly, Giuliani sent the troops in with their shields and helmets, and they moved in like a battalion, in a close, tight battalion in on the Million Youth March defenses. And it was a big clash, and 17 cops went to the hospital, and 7 of our men went to the hospital, And I'll take a break right now because I said a lot, but that's what happened. It was a real live throwdown. It ended with a real live throwdown with the police. Khalid Muhammad was the keynote speaker.
Yeah, I remember that. 30 minutes off the top there. But Brother Malik, what was the beef? What was the fight about? Was because you guys were running overtime? Was that all?
The fight was about this. How dare, according to Giuliani, how dare Khalid Muhammad challenge me? How dare him upgrade me? How dare him call me the names that he's called going up to this march? And so I'm going to show him. And so he set the stage. Giuliani set the stage for the confrontation. By packing the march and the sides of it with the police. And it could be fair to say that our revolutionary Khalid Muhammad was offended by that or even triggered by that. Because as we got up to the deadline hour, first of all, I mean, it's an intricate story. He told me, my dear leader, Khalid Muhammad, told me that he did not intend to speak. And so when you watch the program, you see DJ Kool Herc, Sister Erica Ford, Viola Plummer's representative. You see any number of greats, Alambe Brass, they all youth and rappers coming to the mic. And it doesn't even seem like Khalid Muhammad was going to speak. But what he tells us at the Oberia Dempsey Center at the Slave Theater, guest of Alton Maddox, rest his soul, what he tells us is that the situation became so intense and that he anticipated a police attack on the marchers. And I agree with him. That they set the stage for attack. So it was his march, so I guess he was going to make a statement, and his statement was a strong statement of intervention and warning to the police and condemnation to the police. So you heard him. Some of you may have heard clips, or you can Google it if you want a refresher. The Million Youth March, Khalid Muhammad, because he said. Because he's known for his famous words on that day and speaking to Giuliani. He says, Giuliani, he say, you stacked your police all in the aisles and all in the churches. But if you attack us today by the power of our God, if you attack us today, we'll take those guns. This is Muhammad's words. We'll take those guns off of your hips and use those guns on you. And made similar statements about the nightsticks that had been used on Albert, that had been used on Louima to sodomize Louima. Well, at this speech, Muhammad promised that those same nightsticks would be used in the reverse direction against the police. And so, Brother Carl, that's what triggered Giuliani also. And it could be fairly said that these two warriors triggered each other. And so at 4:01 p.m., Giuliani let his troops and helicopters in, and it was a big fight. And as I said, it was a throwdown. They took the stage by force, but they didn't take it without a price. 17 of them went to the hospital. Two of our men were arrested. Muhammad was a hell of a melee. Muhammad was taken out under emergency circumstances, and it wasn't no smooth ending. I can't lie to you. When they say the Million Man March, where there was not as much as a piece of paper, they'll say wasn't a piece of paper left on the ground, that it wasn't a joint smoked on the mall, and that it was the most peaceful day. Well, they're right about it. But this was different. This was Khalid Muhammad, and it's probably fitting to his career and his character that his march was this controversial.
26 away from the top of there. Did he anticipate that things were going to go south? Did he have contingency plans just in case the cops wilded out like they did?
I honestly speaking, when I look back at it, 27, 6 years, 7 years later, however many years it is, when I look back at it, I would have to say no. I would have to say Muhammad was mostly operating off of his gut revolutionary instincts in the decisions and the choices he made that day. I can honestly remember her name, Sister Viola Plummer. She came up and to me at some point asking me what was the plan. What was the plan? Was it fight or flight? She asking me. Well, hell, I don't know. I mean, just talking amongst each other. I don't know what the plan was. All I know is that Muhammad was in charge. And as the march got close to 4 o'clock deadline and as the tension built, you could see things changing on the stage. I mean, on the stage, we had the Honorable Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakanan on the stage and a host of revolutionaries. Honor to Sister Moena, who helped us, one of Kwame Ture's AAPRP reps in New York. So the whole stage was packed during the program, and everybody was fighting to speak. But you know, it's kind of strange that when it got to around 4 o'clock and Muhammad was about to speak, the stage is clear. I don't know what happened. We gave no order, but somehow or another, Dr. Ben was gone, the stage was clear, and by the time Khalid Muhammad spoke, it was no chairs up there, and it was myself and Brother Talib and Cornell X and some others on security post. And I knew that I was in the back trying to manage both ends. I was moderating the program, and I was in the back trying to build a defensive line in the back with the men we had in the back. Remember getting one man, some of the Panthers from Dallas was there, another whole host of men, Patrice Peterson, who I later defended in a criminal trial from the charge he caught there. I remember myself in the back yelling at the police to back up as they kept taking an inch step forward every minute or however pace they was coming. And at the same time, mobilizing a line of men in the back to cover the line in the back. 2 lines of men, I think all we could muster, about 35 men. And I tried to go back and forth doing that.
That's it, Malik. Thank you for sharing those memories with us.
To Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad's team, the Million Youth March was never about numbers on a permit or sound bites in a nightly news cycle. It was about showing Black youth in one of the most policed neighborhoods in America that someone was willing to stand between them and the state at whatever cost. From their vantage point, Giuliani's New York had already declared war on Black communities through broken windows policing, stop-and-frisk tactics, and a daily drumbeat of criminalization. The march was their answer, a declaration that they would not beg for space, but take it. Not whisper their pain, but shout it from a Harlem stage surrounded by armor and guns. In their narrative, 2 warriors met that day, a Black revolutionary and a white mayor, and triggered each other. But only one of them came backed by helicopters, snipers, and the full machinery of the state. The other came backed by history, rage over fresh lynchings, and a generation of young people who were tired of dying quietly. For Khalid Abdul Muhammad's team, that is the rationale. They did not go to Harlem to make the city comfortable. They went to Harlem to tell the truth as they saw it, to warn their people of the danger around them, and to prove that at least for one afternoon, they would rather stand up and fight than live forever on their knees.